Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the August 22nd, 2017 meeting of Henderson County Fiscal Court. We're very glad you're with us this morning. We're going to begin, as we always do, with an invocation, and Pastor Eric Hoey from Presbyterian Church is with us to lead us in prayer. If you'd all stand, please.
Let us pray. Holy and loving God, we thank you for these elected officials whom you've called to serve you in this county. We pray for them and their leadership, that in each decision they would be able to listen to your voice and discern the best course of action for the people of this county. We pray for their families, that you would bless and protect them so that their families can be a source of refreshment and renewal in their lives. We pray for the agenda and the business to be transacted this day. Allow each needed piece of business bring unity, blessing, and well-being to the people of Henderson County. For we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Hoy. Always a pleasure. Thank you for being here. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Magistrate Warren.
Here.
Magistrate Alexander.
Here.
Magistrate Todd.
Here.
Magistrate Wilkerson.
Here.
And Magistrate Putman.
Here.
Gentlemen, you have in your packets the minutes of the August 1st, 2017 Fiscal Court meeting. After a period of review, I'll entertain a motion to accept those.
So move.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any other additions, corrections, or comments? Please call for a vote.
Magistrate Warren.
Aye.
Magistrate Alexander.
Aye.
Magistrate Todd.
Aye.
Magistrate Wilkerson.
Aye.
And Magistrate Putman.
Aye.
It's time of year when we approve tax rates, and we're going to do that on several fronts over the next few minutes, and we will begin with representatives of our library presenting their 2017-18 tax rates. We have Executive Director of the Library, Caleb May, and Board Member Joan Hoffman. Caleb?
Well, good morning, everyone. I have Vice Chairman of our Trustee Board, Joan Hoffman, today, and she will read our rates into the record.
Judge, and Mr. County Attorney, magistrates, and Madam Clerk, thank you all for allowing us the privilege of representing the library. The Henderson County Public Library District Board of Trustees hereby certifies that 9.7 cents per $100 assessed valuation of real property and 13.04 cents per $100 assessed valuation of personal property is the rate to be levied for the Henderson County Public Library District for the year 2017-2018 in accordance with the provisions of KRS 132.023 as amended by the 1979 extraordinary session and the 1990 regular session of the General Assembly. This was signed the 10th of August 17 by President Bill Loney and Secretary Susan Thurman. I hereby acknowledge that the rate of 9.7 cents per $100 assessed valuation of real property and 13.04 cents per $100 assessed valuation of personal property will be levied for the Henderson County Public Library District for the year 2017-2018. If you have any questions, Caleb is here to answer any of those. This does mean that it's the compensating rate.
While you're coming up to the microphone, Caleb, I'll give everybody a heads up. You should have in your packets actually two sets of documentation on the library tax. The set that's on top in your packet has a little bit more information, an additional amount of information that Caleb provided us this morning, so you'll want to be referring to that. It's the one with the colored chart in the back. They're exactly the same except for that added amount of information and background, so just so we're all on the same page. And Caleb, your comment, please.
Well, I'll stand for any questions, certainly. It's always a great joy to come before you as your servant, as the library director. Been here 2 years now, and I can say that in my experience, this is the best bunch of library patrons in North America, and I'm so pleased to serve them all. And we can't do what we do without the public that we serve. And we are a vitally important resource for the community, now more than ever. I would say as the digital divide continues to grow, certainly there are those of us who can save money by utilizing the services of the library and thereby giving the community an economic stimulus. If we're not paying for Netflix and things like this and getting movies at the library and similar things, that gives us more money that we can go out to eat with and that we can get something for our children with and so forth. So there's that end of the spectrum, but there certainly is, and not all of us see this every day, but we do at the library, those who are unable to access information, to apply for jobs, to continue their education, to better themselves. And those folks we certainly serve in a crucial way every day. And in the packet you see with the yellow and green some of our most recent statistics, which is our summer reading program, and that's broken down by attendance center, those students who did register for the summer reading program and the percentage of those who completed the program from those attendance centers. And overall, Commonwealth-wide, nationwide, 35% overall is a good percentage of those folks completing, but you see some standout numbers in there as well. And these sorts of numbers we certainly will share with the school district, but study after study shows that children who continue to read through the summer are better able to meet the challenges of our economy and our culture as they continue through their educational program and become contributors to our society. So some of those standouts I've highlighted in yellow. Ben Gate, 61% completed of those who registered. South Heights, 67%. Homeschoolers, 54%. South Middle School, 53%. And several others did very well also. But those were some of the standouts this year. And we would love to see more of the older kids participate, as they are the closest to completing, obviously, and going out in the job force and so forth. There may be other factors at play there. Perhaps some of them were already contributing to the society in part-time jobs and that sort of thing. But we love doing what we do every day and be glad to answer any questions.
I notice the rates are just a slight increase over last year's. Are these basically the compensating rate that the board is taking?
Correct, and that is the Kentucky Department of Libraries and Archives that computes those rates. And they are as everything is, the best estimate of what our taxing district, which is the population of the county, can provide to give us a similar amount as we had last year, considering inflation and all the other factors that change from year to year. And as you see, for many years, that is what we have taken, is that compensating rate.
5 out of the last 6 years, I think I counted. Right. And is it fair to say that your current expansion plays into the decision a bit?
It does. We currently have reserves, some, and that is all planned out for contingencies, capital improvement, and our general operation. And it may be the case that in a year or two, we may have to exceed the compensating rate, but we are not at the place right now where we would have to do that. Correct. Our foundation board, with Scott Davis as the president, they are very crucial to our capital campaign that will be forthcoming first part of this coming year in raising funds excuse me, for our planned expansion project, which will be a combination of reserve monies, capital campaign, fundraising, and some bonding possible as well as part of that combination of resources. We don't know exactly the budget for the project. Approximately in the $4 million range is probably what we will be looking at. And currently about 15,000 square feet looks to be our additional space on a two-story addition to engage more with the riverfront and provide mostly for what we see our services expanding in, which is physical, in-person instruction and programming with our patrons. And currently we just don't have the facilities to house a great number of people at any given time in our facilities.
Any other questions?
My curiosity, I guess, and looking at the list, I noticed it said inventory and transit. In the other areas, categories, whether it be the county or health department or extension, didn't have that as a taxable. What is that?
I don't pretend to be an expert on these funds, but we did ask that actually our trustees last year of our Region 2 KDLA representative, and what I understand is that is inventory that is moved from one place to another. So for example, at the Riverport, if folks have things that are perhaps aluminum in railroad cars, it may end up being cheaper for them to move those railroad cars from one end of the facility to the other in the course of a year and pay the inventory in transit as opposed to regular inventory. And so that is a way that they can operate to save a few dollars sometimes, but it is something that is taxed.
And has been in the past, apparently.
And probably, I guess I just hadn't looked down there at that, and I figured you would give me a better definition than anybody, so thank you.
We had Dick Blom come, he explained it all to us.
I got you.
It's also one of those items that can be protected for some companies by the use of international trade zones
Right.
out at the Riverport for companies that have a lot of that and are shipping internationally. So.
Gotcha.
And I believe inventory in transit is exempt from city and county taxes, but other taxing districts do have the ability to tax it. But it's been a while since I've looked at that statute.
Any other questions? Madam Clerk, remind me we need a vote to accept these tax rates.
Yeah.
So I'll entertain a motion to accept the 2017-18 library tax rates.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Please call the roll.
Magistrate Warren.
Aye.
Magistrate Alexander.
Aye.
Magistrate Todd.
Aye.
Magistrate Wilkerson.
Aye.
And Magistrate Putnam.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, our Henderson County Health Department will be setting its 2017-18 tax rates, and the new Green River District Health Director, Clayton Horton, is with us. Welcome. Glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel like that, or at least I was under the impression that perhaps the tax rate coming up on my first meeting with Henderson Fiscal Court was a coincidence. Maybe not. Maybe it was by design. But if it's okay with the court, I would like to maybe just give a little bit of a health department update, and then before you consider the resolution.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So thank you. I am Clay Horton. I am the newly hired director for the Green River District Health Department. Today is my third week anniversary on that job, so it's all going well so far. But I've been with the health department for much longer than that. I've worked with the health department for about 19 years. Came from the environmental side and have spent quite a bit of time in Henderson doing that work. Just kind of wanted to put on your all's radar a few things that are going on with the health department. Each 3-year cycle, we work with Healthy Henderson to complete a community health assessment and a community health improvement plan. And we are currently in the planning phase of that, for that to roll out in early 2018. We are already in the process of visiting community events. We've done a couple here in Henderson already, one with the Housing Authority, one with the Attorney General's Drug Forum that was a couple of weeks ago, to collect kind of opinions and perspectives on needs for the health of the community. In September, we'll be doing a more randomized household survey where we'll actually have teams visiting houses in Henderson and asking them, asking the members of that household to complete a questionnaire or survey about their needs and what's going on with what their lives and what their perspectives of health are. And then all of that will culminate into a large report that will be ready after the first of the year, and we'll have forums here in Henderson where we will invite both the public and people that work in the health sector to come and participate to help finalize what the health priorities are for the community moving forward. In your packet, I've got several slides here that are with some data from our Community Access Project. If you're not familiar with the Henderson Community Access Project, it's a program that's funded primarily through the Henderson Taxing District, where we facilitate getting donated medications and pharmaceuticals for citizens of Henderson. We also help with diabetes supplies, dental extractions, and navigating people to get signed up for health insurance and Medicaid. There's also a low-income subsidy enrollment, and through the health insurance exchanges. And then we also provide other education and health literacy to the clients so that they kind of understand how to take control of their health and their health care. But in there, you'll see that for 2017, so far in donated prescriptions and pharmaceutical companies is $1,452,713. And there's a little bit of several years of history there showing that number is consistently over $1 million and continues to increase each year. For 2017, we've had 298 enrollees into Medicaid insurance, and overall from 2013 to current, that's 1,604 people. We also, I think I failed to mention when I went through the list, we also help people with getting connected with smoking cessation information through the Quit Now Kentucky. 142 people have been served with that this year. And then with the dental extraction program, these are emergency situations where people need emergency dental care, and that we're able to provide financial assistance to pay for those extractions. For the current year, 26 patients have received care through that program, and then since 2011, when the program was started, it's 595. And then the numbers continue to be impressive when you look at donated care and donated supplies for our diabetic clients. $193,048 in supplies for just this 2017 up to this point alone. And then beyond the DC or the Henderson CAP project, I also kind of wanted to let you all know what may be on the horizon in terms of the health department becoming involved in sponsoring and running a harm reduction syringe exchange program. This is a mechanism that the legislature has empowered health departments to provide. Previous to a couple of years ago, it was not legal in Kentucky. Public health departments now have the ability to run needle exchanges, and that's in response to the opioid crisis. Intravenous drug users are at high risk for transmission of HIV and hepatitis C. And so we have seen 26 health departments in Kentucky set up needle exchanges. The Green River District Health Department the governing board has supported that. The Henderson County Board of Health has April of last year, passed a resolution to support that. And we're currently talking to community partners, River Valley Behavioral Health and Matthew 25, about putting together a needle exchange in Henderson County. If those plans come together, I'll be coming back to fiscal court and asking for your approval on that. Right now, River Valley has put together a proposal for a opioid treatment expansion program, and they have applied for grant funding for that program that would involve all three of those agencies, and we should hear an answer on that probably within the next week or so. And hopefully in short order, I'll be coming back to you with a more concrete plan to share with you and to ask for your approval and obviously give a little bit more detailed presentation at that point and provide you with more information. So that's a lot in a short amount of time, but I just kind of wanted to hit some of the highlights and some of the work that we're doing at the health department. I'm happy to entertain any questions on that, or we can move along to the tax resolution, which I believe you already have a copy of.
Any comments or questions? I know Magistrate Todd, Magistrate Alexander, long involvement in the health department. Any comments?
Right. I just want to note this. this access to the health drugs, to the drugs, that program, we started that, and that's a $50,000 is what we put into that project each year. And I guess it started in 11, so it's going to be around $500,000, and we get back $10 million,
Yes.
roughly. That's a pretty good bang for your buck, I
It's an
feel
amazing
like.
return on investment, and that's one of the reasons why we're really proud of this program
And-
and like to share that with you all.
And I'll say a lot of this is because it got me aware. I was chairman of the board at the time, and the judge came to us, the Henderson, the group, Leadership Henderson came to us, and you were on that thing that sponsored, we need to do something about the health in Henderson, and I remember y'all came to that and talked about it.
He's referring to a Henderson Leadership Initiative project growing and expanding the extraction program, because at the time meth addictions were at the forefront of a lot of the efforts here, and as you know, one of the byproducts of meth addiction is dental problems, and it was a major issue here, and working with Charles Alexander and Hugh McCormick at the time, the health department was very responsive, and to this day is helping do that. And thank you for your help then. And it's obviously not a problem that's been completely solved, but the health department is helping those people every day. So.
And I will say that, as you touched on, you're not going to come up here and ask people to vote on something on the needle exchange without education.
Right.
And we're going to provide some notable people that you know and respect and trust, and to come in and explain to you how it's going to be before you have to vote. It's not just going to be on the agenda someday and said, bang, right? We're going to
Yes, sir.
educate
And thank you for
everybody on
reinforcing
that.
that point. I just wanted today. I just felt like that I needed to raise the issue, to let you know that this is something on the horizon. It will be something that we probably will present to the court, and I just kind of wanted you to be prepared for that.
Right, because your first impressions kind of draw back somewhat negative, possibly, the public, but after you really get into it and listen to it, it makes a whole lot of sense, and that's what they're going to explain to us.
My first initial, I had a little concern, but after looking at it, it's not just exchanging needles, but it's offering help. So I think that's big important.
Yeah, the data is showing that you're 6 times more likely to enter recovery or to get help if you're a client of a needle exchange.
Because you're interacting with health department staff who want to help you find help, right?
That's right.
Yeah. We look forward to that discussion. Want to move on to your rate?
The tax rate, like I said, I believe you have a copy of the resolution. In April, the district, the Henderson board, the Henderson Board of Health met, and they set the real property tax rate at 5 cents per $100 of assessed value, and for the same for motor vehicles.
And again, that's an increase. Do you want to talk a little bit about the need there?
Sure. The bulk of that increase was a result of what's called the contribution rate. Henderson is a member of a 7-county regional or district health department, and so as that, the Henderson or the County Board of Health basically has 3 functions. They elect representation to the governing board. And so they have members from their board that represent them on the district board. They maintain the property for the health department here in Henderson. And then Henderson's been very active in terms of funding special projects like the CAP project. But that board sends representation to the district board, which is the governing body who hires all of the staff, runs all of the operations, pays all of the bills, pays the utilities, and basically operates the health department for the whole region and the county. The way that that's funded through local taxes is what they consider the contribution rate, and that contribution rate hasn't been raised since
27 years.
At least 27 years. It was 1988, 1989. Not a little fuzzy on the exact date, but back in January, the district board did vote to raise the contribution rate from 2.5 cents to 4 cents per $100 of assessed value. And that seems like a big jump. That was after about 8 years of spending down reserves. A lot has changed in Kentucky in the way public health is funded over those years. A lot has changed in terms of expenses associated with the retirement system and health insurance. A lot has changed in terms of the number of clients that we're serving that either don't have insurance or are served by Medicaid. One of the big hits that we've taken over the last several years is, as you may know, Medicaid is funded both federally and at a state level. Health departments are now required, or they've been required for about 4 or 5 years, to pay the state portion of that funding out of their own money. So the way that it works is every time we see someone that has a service that we bill to Medicaid, we bill for that, we get reimbursed for it, and then we receive a bill back from the state where we have to pay the state portion, and that's about 30%. So it would be like a doctor's office taking a 30% discount off of every service that they provided. So that drove a lot of that increase in terms to honor that contribution rate. I think the board also discussed some of the projects that they've continued to fund and looked at their levels of reserves and determined that 5 cents was the appropriate level to set the tax rate.
So am I right in understanding the relatively significant increase in Medicaid enrollees here in the state has a negative financial impact overall on health districts?
I wouldn't say that because it becomes very complicated to track because the expanded portion of Medicaid, the state portion is much smaller. And so it's still providing services to individuals. It does still produce revenue for the health department, and that's very important because local tax dollars are really about a quarter of our revenue source. So we're still very dependent upon being able to generate revenue from other sources. We still want people that are eligible to have that Medicaid, but it's just not the big revenue generating source that it once was. I wouldn't say that by serving those clients is a detriment to us. I think actually the opposite, but just trying to paint the picture of why we were able to do it with a lower tax rate before and we're not able to now.
You could also, at one point, we didn't have to contribute that money back to the state, right?
That's correct. That's a recent.
That's 600,000 that went from paying nothing to have to pay 600,000, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes, and it varies a little bit year to year, but that's in the ballpark.
Like 3 or 4 years ago, the states decided that we had to reimburse them. Correct.
That is correct.
And I think it could be said that if you were not providing these services to this segment, they would be seeking funding from other sources. So it's kind of somebody had to step up to the plate.
Yes.
And I think with the health department, y'all certainly, and you've been on the board longer than anybody, I guess, have done that. So I can see in this case a justification because those services have to be provided.
All right, our major role is assurance.
Yeah.
If no one else is in the community able to do it, we're there to assure that it can be.
Right.
Any other comments, Magistrate Todd? Any other thoughts?
Got just a quick question. One thing I've noticed around the state is it appears that some counties that have been in multi-county health departments have been going independent, withdrawing from those multi-county health departments. I assume you're on the side of saying that we do better together as a group. So can you tell a little bit about the virtues of that or why it's better to be part of a multi-county district?
Yes. So I would very much be on the side of saying that we're better as a group. And I'm sure it's going to vary from independent county to independent county. But I think that you're getting a good value in terms of the contribution rate to the district health department. We're sharing all of those administrative resources. Every county doesn't have to have an IT person. We have 2 IT people that cover 7 counties. There doesn't have to be an HR department for every county. There doesn't have to be a billing department for every county. There doesn't have to be the bookkeeping and finance department for every county. We are a nationally accredited health department. We were the 61st local health department in the country to become nationally accredited. There's many more since then. That was 2 years ago that we became nationally accredited. That means that we're meeting what has been set out in terms of the gold standard in terms of what public health department should be serving the community. Having gone through that accreditation process was pretty intense, and also the amount of work that was needed to prepare for that, I can tell you that it would have been infinitely harder if we had been a single county, just because we're able to share those resources. And then on a practical matter, the counties get better coverage because we are part of a district health department. If there is some type of environmental complaint or a sewage emergency or a water emergency in one county that needs a response from the health department, and that environmentalist happens to be on vacation, we pull from the other counties, so that we ensure if people take vacations, we make sure that that there is coverage for each county, and I come from the environmental world, so that's where I always go for my examples. But the same is true for our clinic services. We have nurses that float from different counties just to ensure that we're giving the best service that we can to the entire district.
Well, and thank you for that. I just wanted to, whenever there's an increase like this, somebody in the public's going to say, hey, wait a second, what's going on here? And I think it was important for you to get those benefits out about why it's important to be part of it.
I appreciate that opportunity.
Also, I think Marshall County's individual, and their rate is 9-something. Is what their rate is. And what do we contribute? Is it like 400 and some thousand twice a year? Is it like 800,000? Is that our contribution? Or
let me look at the.
It's close, yeah. It's
Contribution to the
district for doing for being a member.
No, it looks
of
like it's about 1.2 million.
Okay, well, 1.2 million. It would be hard to run an agency for the county on $1.2 million. For the size, you count 2 or 3 nurses and 2 or 3 clerks and 2 or 3 sanitation people and all that kind of stuff.
And the number of people they see.
Right. It would. Yeah. I don't think you could do it for 1.2 million.
And I just want to make sure that information got out there. I think it's important for people to hear that.
And I'd like to read her again. This will be the first time you touched this rate in more than 2 decades.
Right.
Okay. Throw that out there. So, any other comments or questions? Thank you, and I will entertain a motion to approve these.
So moved.
second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions for Mr. Horton or any other comments? Please call for a vote.
Magistrate Warren.
Aye.
Magistrate Alexander.
Aye.
Magistrate Todd.
Aye.
Magistrate Wilkerson.
Aye.
And Magistrate Putman.
Aye.
Thank you, and thanks for joining us today. Up next, we have our Henderson County Cooperative Extension Service representatives, Amanda Hardy and board member Bill Gentry. Welcome. Glad you're here.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning, Bill.
How are you? If I may, I'll read the resolution first. And Amanda, being our fiscal expert, is here to answer questions and concerns. The Henderson County Cooperative Extension Service District Board hereby certifies that 3.269 cents per 100 assessed valuation of real property and 4.4958 cents per $100 assessed valuation of personal property is a rate to be levied for the Henderson County Cooperative Extension Service District for the year of 2017 in accordance with the provisions of Kentucky Revised Statute 164655. The motor vehicle and watercraft property tax rate was levied at 1.5 cents per $100 assessed valuation. And this was signed by William K. Gentry, President, and Robert McIndoe, Secretary. This does indicate that we have elected to take the compensating rate this year, which is a change, so we would be happy to address any questions or concerns you might have.
One of the things I know, I sit on that panel, and the extension offices around the state are a little concerned about funding from the University of Kentucky because of the financial issues that the UK is facing based on state revenues. So one of the justifications for taking the compensating rate was to prepare the local extension office for any shortfalls or reductions in assistance from Lexington. Is that accurate to say? And if you don't mind, I'd like Amanda Hardy maybe to explain that a little bit better.
We currently are undergoing a state review, and the results of that have not fully come out. We got a draft last week. It is stating right now that they are still, like I said, it's a draft, so they're still waiting to get more information out. But currently, they are looking at possibly going to a 2-agent county, which basically doesn't mean that we lose anyone, but funding. So we have 5 agents in our county. We pay for 3, or the state pays for 3, so we pay for currently 2. So that would mean we would go to paying for 3. So that's where our funding would need to go up. So that was one of the things that we had talked about in our last meeting. So that is actually in this draft that has come out. The other thing that they are proposing in this is that anyone with a 6 county and up, which would not be us, but we actually could fall in that because we're in the tier as far as county revenue, is that we would have to have a county manager. So that also proposes another salary. So that is something that it looks to be right now that would be optional. So that's just something else that I've read up on. But what the unknown is that, like I said, it's a draft, and the agents have an opportunity to meet with Dean Nancy Cox on September 18th. So we are still under the unknown. One of our district board members is part of the State Extension Council. She's actually the vice president, Karen Hill, and talked to her yesterday, and she did not have a good feeling coming back from this State Extension Council meeting. So we are just kind of up in the air right now on what is going on with the university and what this county or state review is coming out with. So that is one reason that we decided to take compensating rate, because we don't know what they're going to come back and ask of these counties. We know that it is a possibility. It's always a possibility of more money. So one of the biggest things they come back that they can come back and say is, we're going to this 2-agent model, which basically means they're going to only pay for 2 agents. So we would have to come up with the rest of the money. So that's where we stand right now.
And as many of you have learned during your service on this panel, sometimes the time of year when the state asks you to set these rates and the time of year when the reality of all these things is known are 2 different times of the year, and it makes it hard to budget. And I think that was the gist of the discussion that the board had on setting this rate. It was a long discussion, very carefully considered, and thankfully, merely the compensating rate the board felt could cover in case of some of these decisions coming down from the University of Kentucky's Cooperative Extension Service headquarters. So,
We were not happy to have to make that decision.
if you could step up to the mic, though.
And it was taken seriously.
Could you say that into the mic?
I'm sorry. We were sorry to have to make this decision based on uncertainty, and it was certainly not taken lightly, something we did not want to do, but we felt like under the circumstances, as Judge Snyder said, sometimes you're forced to set rates before you have all the information. So we appreciate you. Thank you.
Any other questions? With that, I'll entertain a motion to accept these rates for 2017-18 for the Cooperative Extension Service.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? Take the roll, please.
Magistrate Warren.
Aye.
Magistrate Alexander.
Aye.
Magistrate Todd.
Aye.
Magistrate Wilkerson.
Aye.
And Magistrate Putman.
Aye.
Next will be the Henderson County rates themselves for 2017-18. Happy to report that in our case, we will not be changing rates year over year. We budgeted based on the same rates from last fiscal year. And any other comments or questions on that? With that, I'll ask for a motion to approve these rates. Again, same year over year from last year.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments or Questions?
I will say as a compliment to the court and also the fact of the Finance Committee as well. But I really believe that we are reviewing consistently our financial status and how we're doing both on expenses as well as income, so we don't have these surprises. So it really doesn't, I know, surprise us that we're not raising it, because we have stood fast and have watched our spending. Obviously, I mean, I can't deny that the net profits payroll tax has not allowed us to maybe be able to do this, but that was a tax that many other counties had before we ever considered it. So with that being said, I'm just saying that we are watching our bottom line.
Any other questions, comments? Please call the roll.
Magistrate Warren.
Aye.
Magistrate Alexander.
Aye.
Magistrate Todd.
Aye.
Magistrate Wilkerson.
Aye.
And Magistrate Putman.
Aye.
Thank you. And thanks for representatives of all those agencies who were with us this morning for being here. We appreciate what you do.
Judge, can I ask Steve a question?
Sure.
I just want to make sure for the library leaves, after I brought that, when we did the extension office, we listed all of theirs. Did we need to, in our motion back to that inventory and transit, that was not, did we need to approve that? Because our motion, I don't think, read that. It was based on your proposal, which only had to do with real property and personal, but did inventory and transit have to be approved in our motion?
It was,
Because if it's not in our motion, can it be printed on the tax bill?
it's unchanged from year to year.
Well, but it is listed as a 11.8 tax rate, and we, out of all these on this page, we didn't list that in our motion, so I didn't know if we needed to. Or they didn't
Okay,
present it in their motion.
They presented their certification, which, did that include that or not? They presented a property tax rate request form, but their certification that they signed off on did not
Right.
include
So it's
that.
not a public record, and I didn't know if it needed to be a public record.
Just say they present it to my office and I certify it in my office. They present it to me in my office and I certify it in my office upon presenting and preparing the bills. So I certify it as the preparer of the bills. I mean, I don't know as far as,
I guess, Renisa, the question is, which was, were you sent both this written certification and
yes,
their state?
I have both in my office. I do.
Would you feel more comfortable, go ahead and take a formal vote on the 11.8 rate and just be done with that?
If it needs to be done, that's the only thing. I don't know if it needs to be. I'd hate for it to get down to 2 months from now and we go, oh, no.
It's
Now,
never been
isn't
done.
the rate they have listed is actually 13.04.
That's personal property. We're talking about inventory and transit.
Right.
Which, if you look at that form, it says 13.04.
That's right.
So it
So
would
Caleb, we have
necessitate a
we have
change
a-
in the fiscal court's
Yeah,
draft orders.
Can we clarify here?
Sure. The same resolution that we always present is the one that you all adopted. That one. And the original that we report for this one, this form, is to the Department of Revenue Office of Property Valuation, and a copy goes to the county clerk.
But shouldn't it be the same?
Should what be the same?
What we verbally approve and of record, shouldn't it be the same as what Renissa says? Because otherwise, we're not saying the same thing.
And in point of fact, Magistrate Todd makes a very good point. The fiscal court, on all of these rates, the fiscal court does not approve the rate. The fiscal court accepts it for printing. And that's something to be clear, because even if you all disagreed with the rate itself, there's not much you can do about it.
Excellent point there. The Library District Board of Trustees are the governing entity of the library that set the rates under the legislature of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. So
No.
it is reported to you all, and you all accept those rates with the standard certification that we always print up and
Now that-
present to you. And it's really more for information that it's broken down, and we provided that to you as well.
That being said, it does make sense maybe for next year to include that just for sake of clarity.
Yeah, I mean, it's not for us to approve
But I
or
think
deny.
possibly
It's just
the
for clarification.
fiscal court
Yeah, we're
may.
accepting the
Caleb.
rate, or-
Under this property tax rate request form for tax year 2017, you have the watercraft rate at 13.04 and the in-transit inventory rate at 13.04. Last year, the watercraft rate was 0, and last year, the inventory and transit rate was 11.8. So there may have just been a clerical error in that regard.
That last year there was an error, and our trustees had to actually revisit that. So you may have a different form than what was the official one. You should have had both of them, and we would have stricken the one. One of them was signed by Joan Hoffman when she was chair, and the other one with Bill Loney. The one signed by Bill Loney was the official one. Is that the one that you have?
That's the one that I have, Bill Loney.
Okay.
I think the best way to clarify this may be for the fiscal court to acknowledge receipt of the property, the library's property tax rate request form for the tax year 2017, which includes all of those rates.
I agree.
And that you could probably solve that with a quick vote.
Does that
on
require a vote? you think?
And I'll
Yes.
take counsel by the Department of Library and Archives, because this language does come from them. So we can see what other library districts do as well. If we need to modify that language, we certainly can.
And this listing of rates
It is a standard.
might have been our mistake if we were not aware of this correction that you
Yeah,
made.
it wasn't.
So what I'll do is I'll ask for a motion to accept this form, and then we will go from there.
I'll make that motion just for clarification purposes.
Thank you.
We have a motion?
Second.
Motion and a second to accept from library staff the property tax rate request form for tax year 2017. Any other questions? Please call for a vote.
Magistrate Warren.
Aye.
Magistrate Alexander.
Aye.
Magistrate Todd.
Aye.
Magistrate Wilkerson.
Aye.
And Magistrate Putman.
Aye.
Okay. Do that now. Because we just voted on the county tax rates that apparently are incorrect, don't reflect this change right here, I'd like to ask for another vote accepting the Henderson County Fiscal Court tax rates for 2017 with the amendment that we just accepted. Can I get a motion on that, please?
So that would be this order with the public library's inventory and transit rate not being 11.8, but being 13.04.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Anybody confused about this?
Anybody not confused?
Yeah. We're going to make sure that this document is correct.
Correct, yeah. Understood, got it.
Okay. Please call for a vote.
Magistrate Warren.
Aye.
Magistrate Alexander.
Aye.
Magistrate Todd.
Aye.
Magistrate Wilkerson.
Aye.
And Magistrate Putman.
Aye.
And thank you, Magistrate Warren, for catching that.
That's right.
Next, I saw Ms. Wayne come in. Are you representing the Planning Commission? A couple recommendations for us, if you refer to your packets.
We had two rezonings in the county. The first one, we changed from C1 neighborhood business to ag. Any questions on that one?
Can you remind me which case number that is?
It's rezoning 1074.
1074, okay.
No questions?
This is Amy Skaggs on
Yes.
15751 136 East. And remind me of the rezoning from what to what now?
Okay, it went from neighborhood business to agriculture because they consolidated a piece of ag in the back, and we looked back for several years and never could really find where that property was rezoned to neighborhood business, and so we had to rezone it to match the ag.
So this consolidates and cleans it up a little bit?
Yes, it cleans it up.
questions? Why don't you go to the next?
Okay. The next one is rezoning 1072 Kim Hall. This is at 1555 March Lane. This was rezoned from R1 to residential 2, which is multifamily, and it matches. They consolidated it with another tract that is R2, and that was to clean that up also.
We need a vote to accept these recommendations, Mr. Gold.
Since it's a map amendment, does that need to be done by ordinance?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes,
we'll
both
need
of
to
these.
just set first and second reading of an
Yes,
ordinance.
you'll have first and second reading.
Okay, so we'll be.
Well, the 21 days will be up tomorrow on it, but we still need an ordinances.
So we'll be. Everybody understand? We're going to move forward. We'll have an ordinance at next first reading at next meeting. Can we do it right now?
Can.
You haven't prepared the ordinance, though.
Nobody's, and that's, you all typically prepare the ordinance, is that
Yeah.
correct?
No.
No, okay.
Mm-mm.
It's been a while since we've done a map amendment, so, okay.
It has.
We'll get together and we'll work on it.
Okay, we'll
So-
work that out.
We'll take these under consideration. We will plan first reading at next meeting. Barring any other questions of Ms. Wayne on this?
The 23rd, which is tomorrow, is the end of the 21 days, and so it automatically, if no one comes forward, it's
We can move forward with the ordinance.
right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The next three resolutions are generated from Larry Kerber at EMA, and I'd like Larry to come and shepherd us through the next three and explain them a little bit, and then we'll take votes.
All right. Morning, Judge, magistrates. I think the first one we have here is the MOU. I forgot the word now. Memorandum of Understanding is what I'm trying to say, between the Green River District Health Department and Henderson County in regards to the Medical Reserve Corps, which is MRC. And this is a memorandum to identify who does what should we get into a disaster that requires the MRC and the health department to assist us for inoculations or sanitation, whatever it may be, that the MRC will be able to do what we hope that they will do to support us and to help us. This resolution is just to put it in a format that it is documented and so on to, yes, we will do this, what MRC will do, and then what the county will do. So that's basically what this is.
We have both the resolution and the actual memorandum in your packets. Is this a renewal of a memorandum, or is this a new requirement?
This is, I believe, is an annual requirement. Is that right, Blake?
Well, we've done this for a long time.
Essentially what it does is if the Medical Reserve Corps is activated, it covers those individuals through our workers' comp.
That's correct.
the main
And the reason for the change in the formalized memorandum of understanding, what I've been told, is through Kentucky State Emergency Management. That was part of their liability insurance or the workers' comp insurance was the one that was providing that coverage. And there's a lot of double counting of volunteers across the state. You have CERT, you have MRC, you have, what are some of the
CERT, you have rescue squads.
You have VOAD. There are different organizations. A lot of these people are members of multiple volunteer groups, and so their insurance rates were much higher because they were double counting, and so they wanted a better way to track that. In the process of setting up that tracking mechanism, they asked for formal memorandums of understanding.
Anybody have any questions of Mr. Horton or Mr. Kerber on this point?
We need to read it into the record, so.
I'm sorry?
We need to read it into the record.
I'll have the fiscal court clerk reading the record, but before we go there, anybody else have any questions about this or any Go ahead.
Whereas the Henderson County Emergency Management and Green River District Health Department agree that the Green River District MRC program located in the Green River District of Kentucky is managed and housed in the Green River District Health Department. Whereas the Henderson County Fiscal Court hereby finds that the Citizen Corps program, which includes Medical Reserve Corps, plays an integral part in the region's preparedness efforts and response strategies. The MRC provides an organized means for medical, non-medical, and public health volunteers to offer their skills and expertise during local regional crisis and throughout the year. Locally based MRC volunteers can assist during large-scale emergencies such as an influenza epidemic or an act of terrorism. MRC volunteers also work to strengthen the overall health and well-being of their communities. Whereas the Henderson County Fiscal Court approves the recommendation of the Henderson County Emergency Management Director that the attached memorandum of understanding be approved. Whereas the Henderson County Fiscal Court deems it to be in the best interest of the citizens of Henderson County to enter into the attached agreement. Now therefore be it resolved that the Henderson County Fiscal Court hereby authorizes and directs County Judge Brad Schneider to execute the attached memorandum of agreement with the Kentucky River Health Department regarding the Medical Reserve Corps and to execute any and all other necessary and appropriate documents required to effectuate the intent thereof.
Entertain a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions on that? Please call for a vote.
Magistrate Moore.
Aye.
Magistrate Alexander.
Aye.
Magistrate Todd.
Aye.
Magistrate Wilkerson.
Aye.
And Magistrate Putman.
Aye.
The next one involves soil maps, and Larry, if you can walk us through that.
Right, the next resolution has to do with soil mapping in regards to earthquake planning and preparedness. This particular grant through GRAD has generated, we have in-kind money for this grant, and that in-kind money is to come from 6 of the 7, well actually all from all 7 counties in the GRAD area. Davis County has already done it. The other 6 counties as are listed as you see them there, and our portion, Henderson County's portion of this grant would be $662.93. And the idea is to get more information and more accurate information on soil qualities and how it would react to a particular event, seismic event, and what we can do to help plan for it because of this extra knowledge.
I believe the correct figure is $662.91, right? Anybody have any questions about that?
And Webster County's paying the additional 2 cents.
Good for them.
Yeah, that's right. Webster County, Jeremy Moore is the lead person on this grant, so he does the signing of the papers and so on and so forth. We're just there to support.
I'll have Madam Clerk read this.
Whereas Webster County Fiscal Court intends to submit an application for Federal Emergency Management Agency Hazard Mitigation Grant Program funding under Disaster Recovery 4278 declared August 26, 2016. Whereas the proposed project, Soil Maps for Seismic Hazard Planning in the Green River Area Development District, is of mutual benefit to Hancock, Henderson, McLean, Ohio, and Union counties. Whereas Webster County Fiscal Court, as the lead applicant, is responsible for contributing 13%, being currently $3,977.48 of the project cost. Whereas the applicant cost shall share the divided in equal parts amongst the project's beneficiary counties as follows: Hancock County, $662.91; Henderson County, $662.91; McLean County, $662.91; Ohio County, $662.91; Union County, $662.91; and Webster County, $662.93. Whereas said cost share plan shall involve the reimbursement of stated funding commitments to the Webster County Fiscal Court after the execution of a memorandum of agreement between the Commonwealth of Kentucky and Webster County Fiscal Court for the proposed project. Whereas each Cost share reimbursement to the Webster County Fiscal Court shall be payable by each beneficiary county upon receipt of invoice. Now therefore be it resolved that the Henderson County Fiscal Court commits to reimbursing the Webster County Fiscal Court in the amount not to exceed $662.91. Such commitment shall take effect under the condition that beneficiary county listed in the cost project share plan authorize a funding commitment with identical conditions. Should project costs exceed existing commitments, additional funding may be reimbursed to Webster County Fiscal Court upon separate action by the Henderson County Fiscal Court and the beneficiary counties.
Entertain a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other questions? Please call for a vote.
Magistrate Warren?
Aye.
Magistrate Alexander?
Aye.
Magistrate Todd?
Aye.
Magistrate Wilkerson?
Aye.
And Magistrate Putman.
Aye.
The final resolution was one we had mentioned before that we were preparing here. A continuity of government plan in case we had an emergency, in case the judge executive is incapacitated in some way, and a person therefore be designated as sitting in that role during the emergency. And after consulting with Mr. Gold and Mr. Kerber, I thought the simplest way to handle it was just appointing magistrates based on length of service. We didn't have a more appropriate thought that entered our head.
For example, what the city does on their continuity of government resolution is that they just go down the list of commissioners as far as vote getting in the last election, which that's, since they all run citywide, that's easier to do. Other counties, there's a mixture of a specific named list, and they pass one of these every year anytime there's an election or anything like that. But a lot of what we see is this exact type of thing. Is just, again, this is an emergency situation. It's in the disability or unavailability of the county judge when there's a declared emergency. It does not replace the statutes that specifically talk about what happens with fiscal court and who runs the meeting at a fiscal court meeting when the county judge is unavailable, or and it certainly doesn't if there's a vacancy in the office of county judge, the governor still has the ability to make that appointment. This just has to do with that small possibility that during the emergency, when the horrible thing hits, when the aliens attack, and the first thing they do is they say, "Take me to your leader," and then they take the county judge up with them. Who in that scenario, and who in that scenario then makes the call whether to try to go get him or not.
Now, Charles, as the longest-serving magistrate, I don't want you to plan on just handing me over to the aliens. But we thought this was the simplest and fairest way to do it, just by length of service. And anybody have any questions about that?
And to further clarify, since it's entirely possible that some magistrates would have the same length of service, then it does default, if there's a tie in length of service, to the highest number of votes received in the most recent election. Now, Renise is going to be in charge of having all that at her fingertips when the aliens arrive.
Again, we thought this was the simplest way to handle it. So, without any questions, I'll have Madam Clerk read the resolution.
Whereas the Henderson County Fiscal Court deems it necessary to provide for the orderly succession of office of Judge Executive in the event of the absence or disability of the Judge Executive as defined in KRS 67.725 when involving a national, state, or local emergency. And whereas pursuant to KRS 67.745 in the event of the absence or disability of the County Judge Executive declared state of emergency, this resolution shall establish an order of temporary succession until such such time as one of the following conditions is met, whichever occurs first. 1, if and when the regular county judge executive should return to the county from absence during the emergency or should recover from disability. Or 2, until the governor of the Commonwealth is able to make an appointment of a successor to the regular county judge executive. Or number 3, until the termination of the state of emergency. Whereas the line of succession contained in this resolution is to ensure that a county governmental official is available to serve in the absence or disability of the county judge. It is therefore resolved that pursuant to KRS 67.740 and KRS 67.745, when the absence or disability of Henderson County Judge Executive shall prevent his or her serving in the office during a national, state, or local emergency, the duties and responsibilities of the county judge executive shall be administered temporarily by a member of the Henderson County Fiscal Court in the following order. Number 1, the longest serving magistrate. Number 2, the second longest serving magistrate. Number 3, the third longest serving magistrate. 4, the fourth longest serving magistrate. And 5, the fifth longest serving magistrate. In the event that a magistrate chooses to decline to act as temporary county judge executive or is unable to do so pursuant to KRS 67.725, then the duty shall go to the next magistrate in order of seniority. In the event 2 or more magistrates have the same length of service, priority shall be given to the magistrate for whom the largest number of votes were cast in the most recent general election.
Entertain a motion to approve that.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other questions? Please call for a vote.
Magistrate Warren.
Aye.
Magistrate Alexander.
Aye.
Magistrate Todd.
Aye.
Magistrate Wilkerson.
Aye.
And Magistrate Putman.
Aye.
Hopefully that gets us square with you, Larry. Thank you
Right.
very much.
We were documented now. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to ask Pete Conrad, Director of our Water District, to approach and give us an update on a grant application he needs to approve.
I don't know what to say. I'm not asking for anybody to worry about aliens. How about that? And I'm not asking for a tax rate. What it is we passed a resolution a couple weeks back, actually probably about a month and a half ago, and I tried turning everything in, and there was some confusion. We passed along a resolution. That's basically what ended up happening. So we just need to repass the resolution and do some signatures and stuff. Do you still have that copy, correct, Sue?
Yep. So this will get you what you need to.
Should, according to the folks I talked to up at KIA, it should. My board's got to pass one, so I think that's where part of it was. They had sent me one set of paperwork for the MOA, and it was actually they basically it was a lot of boilerplate stuff, and they'd sent me the same one that we passed on our grant, through us, and this one here is.
To save us the tedium of reading through the resolution again, is it okay with the court if Madam Clerk just reads the summary at the top?
Sure.
Substantially the same, right?
It is.
That works for me. Resolution of Henderson County Fiscal Court grantee accepting the grant, approving a grant agreement, and a grant assignment and assumption agreement, and authorizing a representative to sign all related documents, which that's already been done.
Entertain a motion to approve this.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments, Pete?
That's all I need.
Call the roll, please.
Magistrate Warren.
Aye.
Magistrate Alexander.
Aye.
Magistrate Todd. Magistrate Wilkerson.
Aye.
And Magistrate Putman.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Get that going. Next, I'd like to call up Coroner Bruce Farmer. Give us an update on his transportation fee schedule.
It's a pleasure seeing everybody this morning. Basically, this goes back to what we talked about in the budget sessions. If you have a copy presented to you of our old fee schedule that is dated from 2007, and the only thing we're doing on this one is we've been asked by our local funeral homes to help us in transportation to help cover some of the cost of them calling out their people at night and all like this. And so we're asking to we're going to pay for a local transportation fee that if a deceased family does not have a choice of a funeral director or if it's somebody from out of town, and we have to hold the body, where they will transport it up to our office where we have a temporary cooler right now that the hospital has loaned us that came in with some Homeland Security money and all. So they're not asking for an increase of what we've put in place in 2007. All we're adding in is one line, and we're going to pay $100 if we have to call a funeral home to come do a transport to bring the body to our office, and that's solely it. They've been real good to work with, all the local funeral homes here. They've all been in agreement. They know the routine, and when we have to send bodies out of town. We're having a year right now right now we're like 8 cases ahead of last year right now, and last year was our second busiest year. Number of cremations has gone up that our office is doing, and so we've been staying pretty busy. But like I said, this is what we talked about in the budget meetings, and that's all we want to do is put it in our official transport fee schedule.
And Mr. Farmer, in the line item for this in your budget,
yes,
did you account for this cost, or is it something that eventually will require us to amend your budget, you think?
Hopefully. That depends on how the death rate keeps on going. Based on what we did last year, yes, we adjusted enough for in there. We were only looking at like 8 or 10 cases in 2016. The unfortunate part of our office is we can't set up and know exactly how many we're going to have, who, what, when, and where.
But you did increase that line item a bit to account for this.
Yes.
So there's a chance it may be covered in the existing budget.
Yes, it should be. Hopefully, it should be covered.
Bruce, I was going to ask you, is this typically recovered back if the family, does the family pay or pay for this at any point?
No, we don't charge the families for transporting for autopsies or anything like this. Now, if we make a call and the family already knows what funeral home they want to use, we call them, let them take over right then and all, and there is no charge that we pay out of our office unless we have to send them to Madisonville or Louisville. So,
any other questions? What I'd like to do is go ahead and ask for a motion to accept this adjustment to the coroner's office transportation fee schedule, just so we can get in the record and acknowledge that we are understanding what this adjustment's all about. So can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions from Coroner? Please call the roll.
Magistrate Warren.
Aye.
Magistrate Alexander.
Aye.
Magistrate Todd.
Aye.
Magistrate Wilkerson. And Magistrate Putman.
Aye.
Thank you, Bruce. And I hope you hope business gets slow pretty soon. Next, I'd like to call up Angela Hagedorn, Director of the Humane Society, to give a update on animal control activities.
Has everyone received the financials? And also, I'm sorry, good morning, County Judge and Magistrates, Madam Clerk and County Attorney. Apologize. Does anyone have any questions concerning the financials?
Should have.
Does everybody have these in front of them?
If no one has any questions, I would like to give a summary, like the end of the fiscal year 2016-2017 report, if that pleases the court.
Yep. Sure.
Okay. One thing I would like to say is thanks to the Water Department and Annette, who I spoke with several times on the phone on Friday. We had no water, which is very difficult to manage with the shelter, and they worked feverishly to get that fixed and get us up and back and running. So I greatly appreciate their hard work. And I also would like to thank Colonel Crafton and Sheriff Brady and the Sheriff's Department. They have assisted me several times and with some different issues, and I greatly appreciate their help. As you know, 2016-2017 was a year of restructuring for the Humane Society. and I was selected as the executive director. And so I'm the director over animal control services and the Humane Society services. So basically, I am the dog warden, for lack of a better term. So, but I also oversee the shelter as far as for their adoptions and that types of services too. The Humane Society took in 1,342 animals, and that includes domestic and livestock because we are responsible for the livestock as well. We had 140 dogs that were able to be returned to their owners, and we had 4 cats, which that's unfortunate. It was only 4 cats. I wish people that lose their cats would contact the shelter, and it's a lot easier for you to contact on the phone and give us a description of a dog than it is a cat. So if you ever lose your cat, please feel free to come to the shelter and look through to see if we have it. I have also reached out to all of the local vets so that we can keep all of our services local. And so I'm in the process of working with the different vets so that we can keep all of our spay and neuter, rabies, vaccines, and all of those services completely local. The animal control had 772 animal control runs during the fiscal year. Animal control had to seize 38 animals due to abuse and neglect. The shelter has been able to maintain a low kill status for the shelter, and this means that no animal has been put down for space in over 5 years. So that's a phenomenal record. The only time that animals are put down is for severe aggression, severe illness, or injury, and the only people that are able to do that service are our certified animal control officers. Now, one thing that Mayor Austin asked us to look at and to come up with a plan was the cats. If you notice, the number of stray cats that come in and the number of owner surrender cats is astronomical. The overpopulation of cats in Henderson County has been reviewed as far as statistics-wise by myself, and I've discussed it with our staff and our board. The total cats that were brought in as stray that died during the intake period or were dead on arrival, which means that they were brought in sick and before we could get them processed, they passed, was 902. So that is a high number. There is a grant that is available for the area development districts, and it's specifically it's called a trap neuter release program. Trap neuter release means that it's the citizens partner with the shelter, and we have humane feral cat traps, and the citizens would come in, they would rent those humane feral cat traps. Once the cat trap is returned, the rental fee is returned back to the person renting. We take the cat, we get them fixed, we get their rabies. The person who captured the cat brings the cat back and releases it back into the community. People go, why are you releasing it back? There's a purpose for feral cats to be in your community. They help with rodent population, which in turn helps with the insect population, and they also provide a barrier for wildlife. So if you have vaccinated, sterile cats in your neighborhood, you're providing a buffer zone between humans and wildlife, as well as helping with the rodent and insect population. So I would like to ask the county judge, because each county in the area development district have to contact each county judge executive to get their support. So I would like to get your support to pursue this grant so that we can start this program for our area development district.
Anybody object to that?
Do you have any other questions about the trap neuter release? I do have a story. Chuck Stennett and Donna Stennett, they, since I've been involved in Kendall, Chuck said, we have this cat that's in our neighborhood having kittens. What do we need to do? And I said, we have a humane feral cat trap. Why don't you trap it, bring it in, we'll get it fixed, rabies shot, and you can release it back. He brought it in. He said, how much does it cost? It cost $60 to get it fixed with its shots. He said, no problem. He paid for it to get fixed, took it right back, and now Mama Kitty is no longer able to be a Mama Kitty, and she's happy in her environment and doing what she is meant to do in the environment.
Would this grant keep people from having to pay that $60?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The only fee you would really have is to rent the trap, but that fee is returned once that trap is returned, because it's basically like a deposit, so we can make sure that our traps return to us and stay in good condition.
We'll be happy to support that application.
Thank you so much. Does anybody have any other questions?
No, I was going to ask you, now, don't y'all notch an ear? Is
Yes,
it a
we
little
do.
tiny notch in their ear? Is
Yes,
that what that means?
they clip the tip of one of the ears. So that way, whenever our animal control officers or anyone in the community, once we start this program, then we can educate everyone to say, if you see that cat and the cat has a notch, you know that cat's been taken care of.
So it's literally clip the ear or notch it?
It's just they clip the ear. So one ear's pointed and the one ear is not.
Okay.
And that way you can visually look at that cat and tell.
I had one show up at my house, and I think he's been neutered and everything, you know. So, and he had a little notch in one ear, but a little notch, not cut.
Now,
and I didn't know what that meant.
Yes, some of them they used to notch it, but it's not as visible as.
It's hard to see.
Yes,
exactly.
so it's easier if you just clip the top, and it doesn't hurt the cat, and you can our officers or anyone can visually see that cat is taken care of.
Ms. Hagedorn, I'd like to address a couple things.
Yes, sir.
The magistrates have been aware of lately is we had a couple complaints about animal control officers.
Yes.
One involving Mr. Radar Mullins and another Ms. Van Diem.
Yes.
And I have met with both of them and assured them that both you and your board were very much concerned and took their complaints seriously, and
Yes.
we're working on corrective action for the folks who were involved and were deemed to have not followed proper procedure. And I believe we've talked since, and you have instigated some reforms and some training measures for those folks. One of the people involved had a in-house punishment, as it were,
Yes.
restricted to desk duty for a while. And you are actively retraining others to make sure that similar incidents don't happen in the future, that everything goes much smoother and much more responsive and positive, correct?
Yes, sir. I have reviewed all of the policies, and to make sure all of our policies are up to date and current, I have in-serviced, which means I have trained all of our staff on the proper policies and procedures that they are to follow. In some of the gaps that I've found in some of our policies, I've created new policies which have been approved by the board. I have the one officer remained on desk duty for a month until I can make sure that she did some webinar training through the Kentucky Animal Care and Control and through the National Animal Care and Control. Plus, she went to a local training that was hosted through the local law enforcement here, and we had done some customer service training as well. So I felt that she had been sufficiently given the opportunity to re-enter the field. So she was on desk duty for a month while she completed that retraining and refocusing, and I think that we should be back on track.
And I know that both Ms. Van Diem and Mr. Mullins were invited to attend your board meeting last night
Yes,
in
sir.
order to express their concerns in person.
Yes.
Unfortunately, they did not show up at the meeting, if I'm not mistaken, but they were extended that opportunity and had their chance to directly interact with the board and perhaps further that conversation. And I know that you're still planning to reach out to Mr. Mullins, hopefully, and hear his concern, even though he did not follow through on his invitation to be at the board meeting last night, correct?
Yes, that is. I always want to make sure that I am available to any citizen that is concerned, so that I can make sure that concerns are addressed. And sometimes it may not be exactly what they want to hear, but I do want them to know that this is what we have in place. This is what we have done. And feel free to share my policies with them so that they can see that this is how we operate.
And I know that part of the retraining process here and the focus on procedures is to make certain that our animal control officers know the limit of their duties.
Yes.
And that your staff have a goal of treating everybody in the community with respect and making sure that they're always given the dignity and good treatment they deserve. And also to make sure that information necessary to have a good interaction with the public and make sure they understand all the responsibilities when they're bringing a pet to the Humane Society or asking for assistance from our animal control officers is clearly understood. All those things are a focus of your concentration.
Yes, sir. And also, part of my plan of correction was to do a code of conduct for the animal control. And as I was looking through the different things to try to develop that, I kept going back to the National Animal Care and Control Code of Conduct, and that's what the board elected to. We're just going to use the National Animal Care and Control Code of Conduct, and so that is what our officers, that's the standard that which they are going to be held by, and that is how I will conduct business. I will refer back to that Code of Conduct.
And the board had unanimous support of these actions, correct?
Yes.
And the chairman of the board, who has a personal relationship with one of the animal control officers involved, did recuse herself during some of these conversations about correction, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So you're satisfied that the board handled this as well as it could and that you're on the road to improvements in those departments?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions of Ms. Hagler?
I just want to commend you for, I was abreast of what was happening at the time, and the way you handled it, I thought you done a great job. You recognized the problem, procedures, and the communication, and that gap that was in there, and just the way you handled the whole thing, I thought was very well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Next, I'd like to call Angela Comer up, our Human Resources Director here, to go over some updates to our Henderson County personnel policy.
Morning, guys. And
Morning. You want to start on page 1 and read this, Angela?
I can if you want. However, you guys were provided with the new handbook and a summary of the policy changes. So, does anybody have any questions on those?
Well, one thing I want to state is as I mentioned in the email I sent out last week, we had a workshop at an department head meeting going over all these updates and got input from the department heads and a lot of questions. Good. It lasted a good hour, but I think we've reached a good agreement. And one of the primary things to remember is this personnel policy is the policy that will govern Henderson County Fiscal Court's direct employees, including those folks up here on the third floor, as well as the road department. The separate department heads do have the option to have their own personnel policy with slight changes or additions. The only thing we asked is that they provide us a written copy of those, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But again, we did meet and lengthy discussion about this update, so that you can take it. Does anybody else have any questions about the summary?
I guess just for clarification, in general, I don't have a problem with what I read, but if each department could change, tweak, what would that look like? Is there an example that you could throw out there for me to what that would look like? Because the policy for county employees are all county employees. So I guess I struggle with what the sheriff's department could do, the jail do, that we couldn't do or wouldn't do. Am I losing you? Or?
No. It was a good question, and there are some examples in both, for instance, jail and in sheriff's department where state law and their particular responsibilities under the law require a bit of adjustment. Is that fair to say, Angela?
And there are currently differences between departments about the length of probationary time, and the department heads at that meeting were they all had very good reasons and strong opinions as to why their probationary period of time needed to be the length that it was. And some of the department heads were also, the constitutionally elected officials were very clear that they were just that, constitutionally elected officials. My recommendation was and will always remain that the more uniform you can make things, the better. The more you can have one policy, the better. But there are situations where either, like the judge said, laws that apply to different departments, or just the particular exigencies that apply to. For example, you've got the sheriff's department and the jail that run 24/7. And with regard to certain sick policies or whatnot, they don't really have an option of not having coverage. So there are some issues there. But with regard to the basics, things like FMLA, ADA, non-discrimination, those types of things, they've got to be as constant as we can make them. So hopefully all of the departments will have policies that adopt the county's policies.
I appreciate the explanation, but that's all federal law, so you really can't do much with that. I guess what maybe I don't understand, like say if I see sick days, if sick days are 12, they're 12. Would that
basically they're their own? The sheriff's their own boss. Bernice is her own boss. She can do whatever she wants to do.
Well, but I'm not arguing against anything. I'm just kind of trying to clear it up. And let's go back to the sick days. The sick days are 12. Are they 12 for everybody in the county? Or could Bernice do 14 or 15 if she so chose?
Can do 14 or 15.
Yeah.
Doesn't the inconsistency
or even discipline? I mean, each department discipline their own employees.
It can be very confusing.
It can be a nightmare for you
with
the inconsistency of something like that.
As long as we, and we did come to an agreement in the meeting, as long as our FMLA policy stands the same, which it will, and our policy states that you will use sick time during your FMLA. So each constitutionally elected officer may allow their people more time. However, they have to notify me at the very beginning. It is still
it'll run
FMLA.
concurrent against
it
the
will run
FMLA.
concurrent, yes.
One thing we wanted to make clear was that if any of the department heads deviated significantly from how they handled discipline, hiring and firing, sick leave, vacation time, things that could engender an argument or a lawsuit, that they should be prepared to defend those changes themselves and not rely on Angela to do it, because this policy expresses what we consider to be best practices in those regard. And if those changes are severely different, tremendously different than what we have in our policy, then we said we might be discussing having the department heads figure into their budgets buying their own liability insurance. And they agreed.
I don't want to beat it to death, but I understand consistency is what it's. If you're consistent with the application as it stands in policies, it keeps you out of trouble.
Absolutely.
Understood.
Magistrate Putman makes an excellent point with regard to that. The more uniformity you can have on these things, the better. A couple of different things. The constitutionally elected officials are constitutionally elected. However, their employees do receive county paychecks and county benefits. You all have a whole lot of authority to make very strong suggestions when it comes to budget time, if there are significant deviations. Furthermore, any deviations from the county policy need to be a written policy written by that department, written by that constitutionally elected officer and distributed to the employees so they know about it. You can't all of a sudden say, oh, wait a second, we have a different policy that nobody knew about. That invites a lawsuit and invites a very successful lawsuit. So, this has to be the default policy. Any deviation from that needs to be very carefully considered by the constitutionally elected official, and I would invite them to get my office involved in that so we can counsel them on how best to do that, if at all.
I truly understand that each one of them, and they all do a fabulous job, and they run their own department. But I just, for county policy, is what I was trying to read, and
I agree with
I
you
see
100%.
that it looks like this one could go that way on some issues. This one could go that way, and it just seems like it opens up Pandora's box, which could create problems for
You're
us.
absolutely
But
right.
but I'm not trying to.
You're absolutely right.
Well,
You know,
the Attorney General did opine the same thing. However, when you have someone in the meeting, the sheriff mentioned that he has deputies out on the road who they have a greater possibility of getting hurt,
Sure,
and needing maybe more time off. In that respect, because he is a constitutionally elected officer, he has the right to change that policy or to supplant that policy.
Yeah, deviate.
But let me ask you a question of documentation. So that, let's say, XYZ department changes their policy midterm. Do they have to submit that to you within 2 weeks, or does 3 months go by and something happen?
No, we spoke and said that they have to do that immediately.
Okay.
Yeah.
Immediate being 7 days, we'll
it
say.
needs to
Right.
be distributed to their employees as well, and the employees, the best
Yes.
practice is to have the employees sign off on an acknowledgement that they've received the newest version of that.
That's
And that's
right.
one of the reasons in this resolution for a delayed effective date of this, to give Angela the time to,
Make
get
sure
it out to
each-
everybody, make sure
yeah.
everybody understands it.
Each employee, not just each department, but each employee with, signatures that they have acknowledgement that they acknowledge that they've received it and understand it.
And these questions were all carefully debated in that meeting, and the best compromise we could come up with at this moment is to establish this policy as the county's policy, and then if the constitutionally elected officers wanted to change it, they must notify us in writing of what those changes are, and we'll judge from there about Angela's responsibility in mediating any arguments that arise out of those changes, and whose responsibility is covering liability insurance.
So there's a difference in sick days, correct?
One of the differences right now is that the county allows a total of 12 sick days in a year. Those can be rolled over to a maximum of 30. The jail's policy is 6 in a year, and has been for some time.
Okay.
That's the only difference?
Yeah.
It's the only one right off the top of my head involving sick days. Every other department, I think, adopted the 12 standard.
And this was adopted, several years ago. It's been like this for quite some time.
So I'm understanding y'all had a department meeting there where all department heads agreed, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But
Good deal.
I do understand, but, I know that department heads are their own boss at the time because they're elected officials, but at the end of the day, we pay the bill. And to me, it's always been my life, whoever pays the bill gets to make some of the rules. That's usually the way it goes. You don't make the rules and not pay the bill. I don't like that.
Well, that's why we were considering we would adjust who paid the bill.
We wind up paying the bill when something goes wrong. Correct?
Yes.
At the moment, yes.
So,
Well, and that's particularly with the sheriff and the county clerk, them being fee offices, even though we do have fee pooling in Henderson County, with them being fee offices, they do have some particular independence that is allowed to them as far as naming who their employees are. And that is something that, it's hard to say no. That person got 7 sick days and you fired them, you can't do that. Well, they kind of get to hire and fire their employees. But like I said, when it comes to budget time, you all, if there are policies that you believe are not just, you certainly do have a lot of authority to, as you say,
I mean, you
exert
know,
some pressure.
That's just the way it is. If it comes down to us paying the bill for something not going right, then we need to be able to make the choice of making it right.
Well, and in reality, the lawsuit against one of the constitutionally elected officials from an employee ends up coming to the county.
That's
Right.
that's what I'm saying.
Well, Steve, just, is there any way, or Judge, because you said in those meetings, I guess, buddy, that it says that only under situations of state and federal contradiction or whatever could this deviate from county policy? Because otherwise you could have 4 or 5 or individually different policies.
You could say that. That is certainly within the fiscal court's purview to do so. I will say that was an incredibly unpopular opinion at the meeting, and it was somewhat, I'm not going to say hotly debated, but it was well debated.
It makes sense that it would have come up. I'm not going to be the first one to probably, all right, I'm just curious. So we'll talk about this some more.
And I'm open to scheduling a workshop where members of fiscal court could sit down with the constitutionally elected officers and discuss this further, if you want. As Steve mentioned, I don't know that you'll get a different response, but at least you'll be able to hear in person the arguments, and you can go from there. If you'd like for us to do that, we can arrange that.
If we do it, and if Charles is going to do it, we got to do it before harvest season starts.
You can't do that. That's going to happen. It's going to happen within a week. So.
Does
No,
anybody
but,
have a thought
but
about that?
not to just to beat this thing to death. I just thought county policy. They should be consistent throughout the county for all employees.
And I will
but
say,
I do understand where one area might have, like, let's say the jail has six sick days. I went to that correctional fatigue training that Amy had a couple weeks ago. Miss Hagedorn was there, seen her there. And it does shed a lot of light on what goes on inside a correctional facility and the stress and all the emotions that's tied to that. But the working shorthanded is an issue. It could be very dangerous in that setting for sure.
Right.
But again, I know we all swear in a deputy. Seems like every week, we have a big turnover. So I understand some of that, but to me, policy is policy. And the closer you can keep it consistent throughout everything, the better off we are. I'm done.
No, that's all right.
I'm done.
I want to
agree.
I want to mention that this is the Henderson County hasn't had a personnel policy very long. I think sometime during Judge Watkins' tenure, later in his tenure, we developed one.
Well, we had one at that time, but it really only spoke about the things we all had in common. It was very short, very, very short. The one that's in place now was when Hugh came into office. When Judge McCormick came into office, he wanted a more broad, more comprehensive policy. But since that point in time, we've always kind of juggled these things back and forth.
My point is to say we've never had a consistent personnel policy in the county.
No.
Never. Not that that's not the goal, but just, coming into this as I have fairly recently, the arguments against observing one consistent policy by the department heads were pretty strong. So if we have a workshop, I would be prepared for them to not agree with the assessment about having one consistent policy.
Well, and I think that the idea of having a more comprehensive policy, at that time, I'm not sure that all of the departments actually had a policy, so at least we had a policy to go by, and we're, like
Right.
Steve Gold said, then, this will be the policy by default if they do not have a policy in place.
Which is a step in the right direction, at least.
Yeah.
Well, the first policy was just to satisfy the law. That's the way it was when we first took over. I can tell you that. And it was just to say that we got one and get off our backs as far as the state and all that. That's about the way it was.
It's part of the administrative code.
Administrative,
and
Right,
That
right.
is Chapter 3 of the administrative code. It incorporates the personnel policy by reference.
But I do appreciate all the work that you guys went into to try to tighten this up or make it a little better, so.
Saying that, would you like to schedule a workshop?
I don't know. I guess I've done most of the babbling here, and Charles a little bit, so I don't know if everybody's interested in that or not, Judge, to be honest with you.
You're whooping a dead horse. I mean, they can do what they want to. So,
I'm not disagreeing with that, Carter, at all.
Well, we have presented the policy with the proposed changes for your consideration, so we can entertain a motion to accept this if you want.
I would. I'd suggest that we just let this policy here work first to see how it works. And then we need to. I mean, department heads have agreed.
And they have agreed to give us in writing any deviations, any changes they make.
Give this a chance to work.
So again, anybody want to make a motion to accept this? So we do not have a motion to accept. So in lieu of not having a motion to accept, would you like me to schedule a workshop?
I think it'd be beneficial, but it's easier for me to attend the meeting than, say, Charles.
Yeah, don't worry about it. I'll get here if I can. It depends on, if you have it at 8 o'clock on Monday morning, I'm probably not going to be
No,
here.
Policies and rules, when we draft them, everything's subject to change in the future. I understand what Carter said. They're each independent of their own agency. They can make rules and policies, as long as they don't conflict with federal or state law. That it is what it is.
Well, I think
I was
it ought
just
to be with us a little bit. I think
but
we
again,
all ought to work together. I don't think it ought to be just one way.
That's kind of what I didn't understand. Why it's just here it is.
Yeah, like it or
Here's
not.
the basic.
We pay the bill.
Just flat. If it's 12 days, it's 12 days.
but if Renisa or the sheriff decides they want to give a guy a day off, they can give him a day off.
They can.
With pay.
They can.
I mean,
But it has to be within a certain number of days of the policy,
yeah, but
whatever
I
their
mean,
policy be.
they can pretty well do what they want to.
Hey, listen, we all love a great boss,
Mhm.
But here's what happens. I'm working for that great boss, but maybe I'm not as great as the next guy. And then that great guy he's getting some perks that I'm not necessarily getting. And you get a smart guy that documents, writes down dates, times, conversations, anything that's happened. And he's going to bring that to somebody, probably the judge. Then here we go.
The Magistrate Putman has hit it directly on the head. Differential treatment is generally a bad thing. We are fair when we are consistent. And when there are wide differences between one person who draws a paycheck from the county and somebody else who draws a paycheck from the county, as far as how they're treated for personnel purposes, that does become a problem. Now, there are certain job classifications that are just different. For example, no matter, even if there was one personnel policy that dealt with every county agency, there's still going to be, Department of Corrections required things for the jail that have to be over and above that deal with a lot of things that really aren't personnel policy stuff. They're more like regulations. Same thing with the Sheriff's Department. They've got things that apply to law enforcement that are unique to law enforcement. But if we can find something that gets the basics of what service as a county employee means one way or another, that would be ideal from a legal standpoint, from a consistency standpoint. But there are also the concerns that each of the elected officials have about what that means and how that would affect their office. So I do think the idea of a work session makes sense. I think it would be helpful for the magistrates to hear that from the department heads and what that means.
And I hate for situations to be sitting out at a country store or whatever, and somebody say, "Well, why did you do it?" Well, I don't know. So I think if we could have a workshop, I can either defend one way or the other as to why we, and I think the work session would enlighten me as to the personnel issues that these various ones have, legitimately. But right now, if somebody will sit there over a cup of coffee and say, well, why did you do it? I'll go, well, we were told that anything we can do about it, so we voted on it. And I don't want that to be my answer. So I think I'd like to have that work session.
Sounds like that's the opinion of the court, so we will work to schedule that and try to get as much information available to you at that meeting as possible.
And we just, you and me personally, I just think it's just being fair to each and every employee of the county, whether it be the
Understood.
sheriff, circuit court clerk, whoever up here. It's just being kind of fair to everyone. Everybody's a county employee.
Understood?
Thank you.
Thank you, Angela.
Next, we have in your packet the sheriff's reports for this meeting. After a period of review, I'll entertain a motion to accept those.
Move to accept.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Magistrate Warren.
Aye.
Magistrate Alexander.
Aye.
Magistrate Todd.
Aye.
Magistrate Wilkerson. And Magistrate Putman.
Aye.
Next, I'd like to call up County Treasurer Ms. Ryder for claims and a budget amendment request. Oh.
These are the bank balances after paying claims today. Your day-to-day expense line item should be at approximately 16%. I have one additional claim from the jail fund in the amount of $2,757.30 to Fossey and Associates, and this is for the number 8 billing for the architectural services for the jail kitchen project.
Any other questions on claims from Ms. Ryder?
Brenda, I had one. It was
Under the road department.
road department is shoot, hold on. Y'all have a lot of paperwork today, or we did, I should say.
Something like parks.
Yeah, parks, portable viewing. Was that video cameras or something, or? At
What was
first-
the vendor?
From Abba's Music. Abba's Music thing.
Abba's Music. Abba's Music was for the parks. It was a sound system, and that was for the fairgrounds upgrade.
Okay. This was Bluegrass Recreation. Vendor was Bluegrass Recreation, I guess, yeah. And it says parks, and it's $3,300, page 1 of roads.
Are you sure you have the same one? Now, I think in July we had a Bluegrass Recreation.
Let me look. I got the same one, I believe, Brenda, because I looked at it too.
I didn't see a Bluegrass Recreation.
Here it is right here. Bluegrass Recreation.
Could that be tied to the?
Viewing.
Could that be tied to the county fair rental of grandstands or anything for the county fair? Bill, any clue on that? I know. I don't think Mitzi Weber's here.
And we didn't get
Are you on page 1 of the road?
And Finance Committee didn't get to meet yesterday. That's the reason why she didn't, in her defense, she didn't get a chance to know we were going to ask.
I'm sorry, I have too many notes on here. That is a portable viewing stand. And my take on that, it would be something for the fairgrounds.
Grandstands.
I think I remember saying that.
Yeah.
Yes, that was about the time this expense was incurred, was during the fair preparation.
I thought maybe it had more with security and we were having issues with some of the parks or something.
I think it's primarily patron viewing.
That's it.
I moved that we pay the claims.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other questions? Brenda? Please call the roll.
Magistrate Warren.
Aye.
Magistrate Alexander.
Aye.
Magistrate Todd.
Aye.
Magistrate Wilkerson.
Aye.
And Magistrate Putman.
Aye.
You have a budget amendment?
Yes, this budget amendment is for the grants fund, increasing the grants fund budget for this fiscal year by $1 million for the purpose of the CDBG grant, which is for Henderson aluminum. That would be increasing the receipts. Also with this is increasing the expenditures of $1 million for the CDBG grant for Henson's aluminum. Basically, this is a flow-through grant.
You have to reflect the revenue and the expenses passed through.
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions about that? Let's call the roll.
Magistrate Putman.
Aye.
I'm sorry. Magistrate Warren.
Aye.
Magistrate Alexander.
Aye.
Magistrate Todd.
Aye.
Magistrate Wilkerson.
Aye.
And Magistrate Putman.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to call County Clerk Renee Sadner up for her update.
Payments for the month of July 2017. Excess fees for the month, $97,321.19. And total amount remitted to the county for July 2017 is $133,852.38. And that is compared to July of 2016, up $22,172.31. So we're starting off the fiscal year in a good way. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Abner?
Move to accept.
Motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other questions? Please call the roll.
Magistrate Warren.
Aye.
Magistrate Alexander.
Aye.
Magistrate Todd.
Aye.
Magistrate Wilkerson.
Aye.
And Magistrate Putman.
Aye.
Mr. Gold, your report, please, and also you have a resolution involving change in personnel.
A couple of different things, Judge. First, we have some checks. Reimbursement for a supplement in the amount of $458.33. Health, dental, life insurance, $7,575.24. $246.93 and $25.18. An AFLAC payment of $25.20. Jail fees collected in the amount of $625.87. Some interest checks, $6.23, $34.71, $173.56, for a total today of $9,171.25, bringing the fiscal year total to $22,909.84.
Motion to accept those.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other questions of Mr. Gold? Vote, please.
Magistrate Warren.
Aye.
Magistrate Todd.
Aye.
Magistrate Wilkerson.
Aye.
And Magistrate Putman.
Aye.
And Judge, I also have a, did I jump in place? Did you give?
you're
I'm
good.
sorry. I saw Magistrate Alexander get up and I didn't know. I'm sorry, jumped in. So we have a resolution regarding some personnel actions in the county attorney's office. I'm sad to report that we had a departure from my first assistant, Nicole Bachman. She is moving to North Carolina to be closer to her homeland of Pennsylvania. So she's going to be greatly missed, but we were able to fill her position very quickly with a lady by the name of Laura Cook, who is with us today. Laura's in the back. Laura, wave at everybody. She is a Henderson native, went down to law school in Florida, did some workers' comp law down there for a couple of years, and we were able to lure her back to her homeland of Henderson. So that is a good thing. What you've got in front of you is a resolution that not only makes it official that she would be stepping into Nicole's position there. And Nicole, both Nicole and Ashley Hampton receive a small supplement to what they receive from the state through the county for work that they do for the county. And so Lars will be $6,320 per year. With being able to shift some state money around, I was actually able to lower the county compensation that goes to Ashley Hampton slightly. So this resolution also does that. And under KRS 69.310, if the aliens ever come for me and I am unavailable, the law says that the county attorney's duties are fulfilled by the first assistant county attorney and then the second assistant county attorney. So Nicole Bachman had been my first assistant county attorney. This designates Kyle Evans as the first assistant county attorney and Ashley Hampton as the second assistant county attorney.
And I believe that effectively just walked us through this resolution. So if you don't mind, I'd like for the clerk to just summarize it at the top, and we have a motion to vote.
Resolution regarding personnel actions in the Henderson County Attorney's Office.
Move to accept.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions of Mr. Gold? Vote, please.
Magistrate Warren.
Aye.
Magistrate Alexander.
Aye.
Magistrate Todd.
Aye.
Magistrate Wilkerson.
Aye.
And Magistrate Footman.
Aye.
Before we get to go to the county, I thought it might be probably better to do it this way, Magistrate Todd.
Okay,
I know pensions, state pensions are on top of everybody's mind lately, especially folks who work for the county. And Magistrate Todd, in his position as chairman of the board of Kentucky Association of Counties this year, has been working hard with their staff and their committees to come up with resolutions and opinions surrounding the debate on state pensions. And I know Mr. Todd has something he'd like to introduce to court.
Yes, I've asked KCO to send out to all the courts across the Commonwealth a resolution to accept, to approve that KCO is working on trying to make sure that the General Assembly and Governor's Office keeps their promise to the invaluable contract, and to ask that they separate CER from KER. And we've sent that. I sent a copy to the judge. And he did an excellent job in writing one up that fits our county. We didn't want a boiler resolution. We want each county to have their own. So I'd like for us to consider approving this resolution to help KCO.
And if you don't mind me adding
Sure.
a little bit to that, there's obviously a debate now at the state level about separating the county employee retirement system from KRS and the other retirement systems that are involved in the one big package. It is KCO's opinion, after much research, that separating CERS is better in the long run for local employees. This is their opinion. I share that opinion. There is some debate about this, but what this resolution does is basically support that idea and support KCO's urging the General Assembly and the Governor to strongly consider that. Basically limited to that. It's just basically supporting KCO's work on this and the idea that the state and the Governor should very carefully consider separation as a possible solution. If you haven't had a time to read this resolution, I can have the clerk read it if you'd like a moment to read through it and see what it says, just to make sure you know what you're voting on. I'd be happy to do that. But again, it's just a measure of support for what KCO is trying, along with many other partners, I should say, not just KCO.
All affiliates. We've met with county clerks. And
KLC is of the same opinion. The City Commission here just passed a resolution basically offering the same sort of support for this idea. So we're not going out on a limb with this, but I think we, at this time, as they're about to enter special session and can strongly consider this, Magistrate Todd, I think, and I both thought it would be a good time to kind of add our 2 cents.
I would say that the issue of separation is not a unanimous thing among the affiliates of KCO. There are several affiliates, such as county attorneys, PVA, circuit clerks, and I think those are the ones that do have employees that are also in KERS, and there is some belief that separation could actually be a problem, could actually hasten the demise of the KERS. So I just, on behalf of county attorneys, I would say that part was not particularly unanimous. Now the request to honor the inviolable contract that both KERS, CERS, SPRS, and TRS represent is something that there was absolute unanimity on.
That's correct. We've met with all the affiliates the last few weeks, and we've been discussing all these policies, and the only one really concerned is the PVA. I mean, of course, like I said, county attorneys in both, and we recognize that. We've asked the PVA to pass a resolution just for the inviolable contract, that they can leave off the CERT, the CER and separation. But we feel that the CER is not really communicated with because there's more KER on the board. We're not getting communication. Plus, CER can sometimes be eligible for like an increase or a merit and not receiving that because they can't do KER, so they don't do CER, and we feel that's unfair. We've met with the executive director of the retirement boards, and I think they're looking at something different, but I think we'll stand firm at we want separation.
Any other thoughts on that?
Bruce, my understanding, or Steve, that in the case of PVA and I guess Circuit Court Clerk and others, because they're under the state,
right?
They can't. I mean, they're basically stuck with.
And we've made a comment. We've made also clear that we wouldn't advocate separation from CER if we thought it would hurt KER. And with the figures we're getting and the discussion we're getting from other folks, we don't feel that it will.
What are people thinking about the inviolable contract? That's what my concern is. I think that I don't really care whether I can support being separate, but I don't see any problem with being together as long as everybody's contract's going to be adhered to that has been promised. That's the big deal to me.
Here's my fear. There's I think a very strong chance at this point that this problem, if CERS is not separated from the other systems, that this problem is going to be solved on the backs of cities and counties.
That's correct.
That cities and counties have always paid the bill we were sent for our retirement systems without fail. We have no choice. We have always budgeted and always paid. The problem that the retirement systems now face is because of actions at Frankfurt not to fully fund the systems, and not our fault. But if without separation, it could very easily be the choice of the state legislature to increase the bill of cities and counties in order to help balance that out. In my opinion, it could be done instead of biting the bullet at Frankfurt of being the bad guys and asking for either cuts or tax increases. They could put it on the cities and counties to do those things. A quick estimate of what it would cost us potentially is $750,000 to $1 million more in our budget sent to Frankfurt to help fix this problem. And that would not all go towards shoring up CERS. Some of it would go towards fixing the overall system.
Right.
Many of us, or people who are discussing this, don't think that's fair. The state caused the problem. The state legislature needs to fix the problem without relying on cities and counties.
Well, they're going to fix it, but guess what?
Our funding.
We're hearing they're already 80% completed on their recommendation, so we expect by the end of this month.
Have you got a feel for what it's going to be?
No, because we can ask. We ask the legislators, we've asked the retirement board, and we've asked the governor's folks, and they all three tell us they don't know because they're not. They hadn't seen the figures themselves yet.
Okay.
So
just a handful.
So we hear in 25%. We hear. I mean, this is going to be 25% reduction in retirement, and the county would increase their funding, and that's where it costs us between Henderson. We looked it up it's by population, I believe. It's like $750 to $1 million that would cost us out of our general fund.
You mean they're thinking that if you've been retired for 15 years and you're getting X amount of dollars every month, they're going to take 25% of that away, just with a stroke of a pen?
Well, we don't know that. I mean, that's rumors. That's what he has made a comment. The governor has made a comment that he was not going to touch the one that's already retired.
But your projected income could drop 25%.
But we don't. I mean, we're not.
Well, what your retirement's going.
We'll see it when everybody else sees it, I guess.
The funding on each one of them, if CERS is 60, what's KERS? Is it 30, 25%?
17, I think.
What was it?
Somewhere in teens, 17,
Wow.
18, 16.
KERS, if I'm not mistaken, is the worst state employee-funded retirement system in the United States.
And if that was, if it's separated, then the CERS would probably get up there where it would almost be, you could call it a qualified plan, because the funding would be up in probably in the 80% or so, percentile pretty quick, wouldn't it? Just kind of
we're thinking.
general. It would grow relatively quickly.
What's the legislators, how is theirs going to be affected? You have any feel for theirs?
Theirs are, they get, theirs
Them
not
and
on-
the judges,
they're not on
how's that
table.
going to be?
They get a raise.
Good question.
Well, in the last I heard, that it may even be that the special session they may or may not address it in the special session.
They may not.
Yeah. I mean, which is what the special session originally was going to be for.
It may be merely a chance to set the ground rules for the debate that'll happen in the next real legislative session.
We've discussed that, but the governor's made it pretty clear that he's going to do something.
Has to do
This session.
something. Has to.
Now, how much he listens to his legislators. There's 34 new ones.
So I'll entertain a motion to approve this resolution.
What's that? Motion.
Bruce, how many counties have accepted this or adopted this resolution today? Do you have any
We
idea?
may be the first. I'm thinking there's one or two others that may have, but we're just now asking. I think we're moving too slowly. End of September is coming up, and we've not done a lot of campaigning. I think all of our county employees, from the road departments to the Renisha staff, all needs to get on the phone and start calling their legislators and making them aware that they expect for them to keep their promise on their invaluable contract. We've got some. We've hired a firm, and the next meeting probably not going to be. I don't know. I just don't think we're moving quick enough, and I'm going to express that with it.
Like Charles, going back to your point, Charles, you could be drawing that money for so many years, and when that pool dries up, then they start cutting your retirement, which you've kind of budgeted for that money. So it's kind of a bad deal. I mean,
you were promised that money.
Or the other issue is somebody that's 17, 18 years or 22
Yeah.
years, and they've got a date circled for their retirement, and then what happens is this kicks this out indefinitely. Because I've talked to lots of people that they're 22, 23, 24 years into the system, and they were hoping to get to that 27. And that last little bit might get put out from under them. I've got two people in my office that have already made their appointments, and with the retirement system, they're like, we're going to go ahead and do it.
Try to beat it when
Because the theory is, or the rumor at least going around to a lot of people, was that if the last people they'll touch will be the retirees. So if you're on that cusp of, hey, I'm going to retire in the next year or two, might as well go ahead and do it, because if they're going to do something that is bad for active employees, might as well become a retiree and be in the hopefully most safe class.
That could be, a backfire. There's 14,000 teachers that's eligible to retire right now. Wow. So.
And even in considering all those scenarios, my main concern too is the idea that they want to fix this on the backs of cities and counties.
Right. That's the reason KECO has been involved so much.
KLC has agreed with KECO's summation
correct.
of this
Yeah.
problem. And so, in many of the affiliates, you mentioned affiliations, you could just rattle off, there's 24 of those, seemingly. And not too many counties have passed this resolution yet, but I think considering the special session is going to start soon, it was time to bring this before the court. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution if you want.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Again, this is just a recommendation.
Right.
It's an opinion.
Because like I say, the bad thing right now, Judge, based on what you're saying, we can pass this, or Bruce, correct? They can still put it on the backs.
Oh, yeah.
This is
That's-
just us
This is
raising
just
our
showing
hand and
support.
saying, please
This is all
don't.
it is.
Yeah, I mean, that's the scary thing, they can instill.
Just trying to create a little unity of opinion here. So we have a motion and a second. Any other comments?
Their day will come too, though.
Yeah, the best thing is that,
I'm sorry, Bruce.
so the best thing was probably everybody show up at the steps.
I can do that.
One of the things you do. But
Okay, please call for a vote.
Magistrate Warren.
Aye.
Magistrate Alexander.
Aye.
Magistrate Todd.
Aye.
Magistrate Wilkerson.
Aye.
And Magistrate Putman.
Aye.
Thank you. I'll take this to Louisville with me this week and hand it to the governor in person. How about that? With that, I'd like to turn to members of the audience. If anybody in the audience would like to address the court for the good of the county.
Just one quick one. I know it's been long. Beth, if you'd make sure that we get it in the paper about the closure of Martin Road on the Monday the 28th, so we can expedite taking out that closed bridge structure and putting in a new one. We estimate the project time frame between 4 to 6 weeks, depending on weather. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak for the good of the county? Magistrate Putman?
Well, like I said, it's been a long, Judge, but everything's good in the fourth, and thank you very much.
Thanks for your input today.
You're welcome.
Master Warren.
I didn't know Bill was going to step out. The only thing I'd like to look at, see if we could look at some type of motion, and I'd be glad to make it, that any time that there's a program process action taken that would impact countywide, and what I'm talking about is that no parking. I had probably more calls on that if Bill could just notify us before that action's taken, so that if we can get constituents, we would know. And I don't think you even knew that was getting ready to happen. Just something so Bill can send out an email, or at the Road Department Committee, say next week we're going to put no park. Example is all this is. It's just in the future that Road Department notify court of action taken that will be taken in the county that will impact, I don't know, the court or whatever. Just so when people call us over and go, oh, sure, we know that, we talked about that. But I had as many calls about that as probably as I have anything. So, but I don't know.
yeah, I kind of agree with that a little bit, because I got calls, or I let Niagara store that I was saying, talking about paying the cul-de-sacs, and I didn't realize it, but
I'll pass that along.
Yeah.
I might get back with them, but
Yeah. And it's not this particular issue. It's just so in the future we can, but I don't know if that needs to be in a form of a motion or.
I don't think so. I think, and judging what rises to that level may be difficult sometimes, but I'll make sure Bill, when in doubt, just send out an email.
Okay.
I can certainly pass that along. We can do it as a road department committee too.
Okay.
Anything else? Master Alexander?
No, go ahead.
I'm good.
Master Wilkerson?
I'm good, thank you.
Master Todd?
appreciate it.
Oh, no, Mr. Gold?
All is good.
Just want to commend Beth for helping update folks on the VFD funding as it progresses through its initial year. This week, we will be forwarding the finalized list of opt-outs to Digital Design, which prints our tax bill. We've done a really careful job in going over that list again and again to make sure it was accurate as possible and accounted for all situations involving property tax bills and little wrinkles in people's how they appear on the tax rolls. It's also, I think, good news to report that it appears as if our expenses surrounding the implementation of the program are going to be much less than anticipated, which is a good thing. Data Design, I think, is going to be able to do this without much deviation from their normal procedure. They had other counties that do this, so it was already incorporated in some of their software. And if I'm speaking out of turn here, Ms. Abner, let me know. But I may be approaching you in the next couple meetings to reduce the amount of fee that the Sheriff's Department will hold back to cover expenses, because they just won't be as much as we thought. Just be thinking about that. We have it at the ordinance, I believe, allows keeping up to 4.25% to cover expenses. The fiscal court can change that, lower it if need be. 4.25%, I think, is the max allowed under KRS. So I may be coming back to you with that. When we get a little bit more data on that, I'll bring it to you. But that's a good sign. And the projected revenue levels for the departments is solid and very closely adheres to what we'd hoped. In some cases, it exceeds it. And we'll give them plenty of resources going forward. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor can leave.